Hello, and welcome back. My name's Corbin, and you're watching episode 10 of my heavily modded Forever world. Previously, we left off getting a taco production set up, so we had a better food supply, and we got the footprint down for the structure you see under me. This structure is going to serve as our center cathedral, and I'll explain to you how it works. So I did a sequence of octagons tapering off at the point, with about 20 blocks of room in between each floor, essentially. And this is all going to be our main building that the entire Hive City stems from. These points that are jutting out are all going to be bridges that lead to the outermost wall, and I'm doing that so it'll give me a place to land when I'm flying around and I could just get in from any side of the building. The center bridges that are perpendicular to each other are actually going to be a little bit smaller than the diagonal bridges, just because I think the diagonal ones are going to have a little bit more character. But that also sets me up really well because the island that we have in the center scoots right past the smaller bridge. Before we can get started on major notions of builds, we're going to need to get a backlog of all of the block types we will use on this build. So I set aside here in my NEI a lot of the blocks that I want to make as my palette. A lot of these are rather farmable really easily, kind of like the cobblestone and the blackstone, but some other things that I'm going to have to fit in are going to be the warped stem, which is going to probably just take over our tree farm that we currently have running right now, and then some of these scoria blocks from create. Glass is just going to be a sequence of crushing cobblestone into gravel, then sand, and we're just going to smelt it. But the hardest part is actually going to be the focus of this episode, which will be our guardian farm. So this guardian farm is going to produce us the prismarine and the sea lanterns we're going to need, but the way we're going to do that is I was thinking I wanted to do one of the nether portal ones where they all teleport into the nether and then I kill them there in a separate chamber. Hopefully that will get us just enough resources that we could at least AFK for a while, but I'm definitely going to need to make an off switch for it so it's not always running. I went ahead and placed a few blocks to demonstrate the structure I was talking about. So my thought process behind this is that guardians look a whole lot like some sort of interdimensional creature, kind of like the warp. So I'm going to make a crystalline structure that looks almost like a rip in time, maybe a portal-like thing that the guardians are quote-unquote coming from, and that's why they are spawning in. So this is going to be kind of like a very interesting star looking scenario. And then this footprint on the bottom just shows the area that I have to play with. This is the entire dimensions of the Guardian Temple that we cleared out previously. And as I marked here with different waypoints so I can get the general shape and size. I kept everything rather symmetrical. I started with that internal shape and diameter that I wanted, and then out of it I started making some angles and kept it going so it looks like a crystalline structure. This is going to look really cool once I get the glass situated for it. It'll look like a portal, and eventually I'll make a structure around it that looks like it's containing this thing. But for now, we're going to have to put a pause on it and get a glass system built up so that we can start mass producing glass and I could fill in this space. The glass system here is set up now. I opted to just have it put into my main ME system, and I'll have that autocraft whatever colored glass I need, but it works something like this. You produce cobblestone with these igneous extruders here that are upgraded with 2 augments. That makes it produce 3 at a time rather than 1. That then puts it into this crushing factory, and then this crushing factory turns it into gravel. The gravel gets automatically pushed into the second crushing factory, turning it into sand, and then it gets automatically pushed into this smelting factory that turns it into glass. Glass gets pushed out and pumped into my ender chest that leads it to my ME system. So now we can go take a look at how much we're making. The number's steadily climbing. It's pretty much 9 per smeltery operation, or actually 18 because I have 2 smelting factories. So every second or so, maybe a little sub-second, it produces 18 glass. We started at about 600 and then I turned it on and we're already at almost 3,000 now. So this will hold me over for at least this next build and probably the rest of my build productions with glass. Off camera, I went ahead and set up the auto-crafting terminals. That way we can create our blank patterns here and store them into the system. So I went ahead and just did the few glass colors that I was going to use probably for this build. I think I'm just mostly going to lean to purple and red, but yellow is just an option I have. And pretty much it works like this, that you just go into the terminal and request the amount that you want, as well as you're going to need processing units attached to your ME system, so that they can do the processing capacity in bytes, in which case, here we are. So I have 2 different CPUs that work it. This one is just producing me that glass request that I did. I requested 200 purple glass, and it's crafting pretty fast. It would be a little bit faster if I put in acceleration cards, but I have a lot of molecular assemblers, so it didn't feel worth it to just craft all of those acceleration cards at this moment. But yeah, I'm going to wait for this glass to cook up, and then we will get to building the structure. The geometric shape that I had made prior got really complicated to place the blocks in and keep it looking good, so I opted to just shave a lot of the external spikes on it and just gonna start by encompassing it in a circle. I might not even go with this center structure because it limits my spawning space a lot. It's more convenient to harvest the guardians in this center space, but I think that if I can manage to do it within this entire sphere that I'm making, I'll have a lot more production on the inside. And I think I have an idea how I want to do that, but I'm actually running out of dye, so I can't keep crafting all of this glass. I think I'm gonna have to start switching over to making the spawning area anyways. I'm also getting rather fed up of placing all of these glass blocks for the time being. I'm getting a little bit of burnout, so I think what I'm going to do is restructure this system that was previously designed to get me the deep slate I was using, and I now need to convert it into cobbled deep slate, cobblestone, and blackstone so that I can get more of my built-up palette. And I'm also going to need to purge these drives and Maybe even change this system up to auto-craft it into the checkered cobblestone. I don't believe I explained what this system is, but essentially it takes an individual crafting module and converts it into whatever chipped variant that I'm using for building, and it pumps it into this chest. This chest is just a fill slot so that I could use it to fill my backpack for placing. It's a pretty straightforward system. It's just one controller, one pattern terminal with whatever pattern I'm auto-crafting at the time, and then this essentially takes one of these drives that I've been filling up here. I move it over and it auto-crafts it into the chipped variant. This essentially serves as 4 separate applied energistic systems, so they all have different crafting rates, because if I do it all on one molecular assembler system, it won't distribute the load fast enough, so I have to make it on separate systems, and I made two units of these 4 patterns, so there's 8 total crafting operations happening at any given time, as you can see with the molecular assemblers on top. So I can convert this into whatever chipped variant I want for each one of these. So coming down to the bottom of our spiral here, this slot fits perfectly for what I want to do. Kind of just crafting it up in my head, this bottom slot here is about 8 blocks total, and the kinds of variants that I'm going to need for the build palette is just going to be the core igneous extruder blocks, so these total 5 here. So what I'm thinking is I'll have the 5 over here as a filler section so that I could just place my backpack on it, and it'll display how much I have stored in my system. I'll also put some sort of a pathway in here to walk in. And then on these 2 blocks over here, I'm going to make a separate filler system for the designated chipped variants that I'm going to have auto-crafted. I don't entirely know how I want to do that, but I know that I want to be able to walk in and manually change the recipe that it is auto-crafting at, so that I can dictate what gets pumped into my backpacks that are going to be used for my building block storage. And for storage, I'm leaning toward not using drives for this system in particular because I want to get into the black hole units. So how these work is pretty simple. It tells you how many of an item you can store at any given time, but the reason I want to go with these in particular versus the drives is because you can only store one kind of an item in this thing, so that I don't need to worry about what drive is getting filled up with what resource, or if it's overpacking another drive so it doesn't have as much space to fill. And the simple black hole unit is pretty easy enough. I can just do that with the latex system I have outside. The version above that would hold 67 million of the block palette, which I don't think I'm going to need for all of these types. Eventually I'll do some systems where I'll keep this, but that has me making advanced machine frames, which are going to be made later on, but not quite right now. The system is a little bit set up different than what I had originally explained. However, we get the gist of it. I had a lot of scratching my head to do as to why it wasn't registering that this was part of its storage capacity for its crafting process, but it was because I had a storage bus connected to this interface when you just need the ME cable, so it can read that there is an input of these blocks. I'll try to explain it as best as I can, and let's start with the generation. So under this area, we have all of the generation setups that you saw me set up, and it all gets piped up and fed into this system. Up here, through this ME interface, it gets piped into all of our black hole units that have storage buses on them, and that essentially works as a register that it can be a storage device without having to have an ME drive connected to it. Now, because I am going to exceed the channel limit, I had to do the trick where I do an ME interface into a storage bus. So all of this is loaded with a block type that it needs, and then a storage bus splits it. And same thing, it divides it into each one of these channels with doing the same trick.
So we have the capacity to put them all in and not take up my entire channel capacity, because this would be too many to wire up in sequence because of how ME controllers work. But now let me show you how I do a crafting process. So I have 6 of these, what are they called, pattern providers, and I have to go in here into my pattern terminal and choose what I want. In which case I want to do my checkered cobblestone, so I make 6 of them. I go ahead and I put them into each pattern terminal. And then we come into this back area and we go ahead and toss what we want it to craft. We need it to register a crafting process, because all of these ME interfaces in the background have crafting cards. And now we could see each molecular assembler at the top crafting our desired chipped block. So now all of those are connected to ender chests of their own. They all have an ender chest part of their system, and the ender chest leads it into right here. So you could see that the items are coming out, the translocator, into an interface, and now getting stored in these drives. So we have a whole bunch of drives that takes up the capacity in case I want to fill this with multiple blocks at a time. It's because I can have different amounts of them crafting. So I could allocate, I don't know, let's say these 2 for one type of block, these 2 for another type of block, and these 2 for another one. And then I could then set up whatever backpack I'm opting to use, in which case I'll just take mine to show. I put it down here. I set an item translocator on top. And we have to make this interface also take out whatever item it wants. And you can see now my backpack is getting full of that block. With that generating blocks for us in the background, we can now continue to place our glass blocks here to make way on our Guardian farm.
Well, that seems to be about all the time that I had for this episode. We were all over the place. Started off with trying to set up a crystalline structure for this guardian farm. We ended up scrapping that idea and turning it into sphere, as well as we set up that auto crafting for our core base building blocks. And now we're going to get those in a mass storage system. That way we can just get to building and go collect the blocks rather than have to wait for them to process. Hopefully in these few episodes to come, it's going to be a lot more structural fun, if you will. But anyways, hope you enjoyed. Take care. Later.